All right, welcome back, everybody. Work in progress. We're gonna do a little disclaimer before we kick off. I think we're good now. We had a little stream gremlin messing up things, but we're gonna. It looks like it's green now, but if for whatever reason our video gets out of sync with our audio, then just put us in a tab and just listen. I don't think the audio is getting messed up, but we are dropping frames, and it looks like we're pretty good right now. So. Welcome to Work in Progress, the live show about work, life, and everything in between from Rena Collective. My name is Colin.
Hello, and I am Rachel from Rena Collective as well.
So what are we talking about this week?
Ooh, this week we are talking about how to make time. So time-making techniques. So the idea is, what do you do to get rid of, or what can you do to get rid of those things that kind of do some time sucking in order to enjoy the things you really want to get to? So it doesn't mean that you have to hate your job, but in order to get on with the life side of work life and find a little bit more balance and maybe even do some of those like passion projects or a hobby you keep putting off or something that you want to start. I know, Colin, you have no idea how to not have a hobby, but for those of us who haven't had enough time, it's like finding time to do those things. So not crushing it and working as hard as possible and being the most productive ever, but sometimes making time out of the time that you do have.
Yeah, I'll have to find this this meme that Chanel sent me today, but it was like basically a guy that it said like you're not supposed to hoard. It was like hoarding hobbies. You're supposed to actually do them instead of hoarding them. Yeah. So, and I think we all have those things that, they may not be work-related things. We're not just talking about work today. It's also finding time just to maybe do nothing or find time for yourself or some of that self-care or things like that. But it's also, and now that might mean for some people, just learning like, I wish I could find the time to swim or to work out or, go hiking, things like that, now that it's getting nice out. So I think figuring out we've kind of gone around this topic a lot in the last couple episodes where we've talked about energy audits and where we are spending our time. And then we've talked about the book club that's going to be in March, literally called Make Time, that we're doing with Ashley. So this is kind of a precursor to that. We haven't read the book yet, so we're not drawing from all of that. We're drawing from personal experience and things that we think might be good techniques. And if you have any things that you've used to either do something quicker, maybe it's something that you don't enjoy doing, like, everything from dishes to laundry to the life maintenance type things, or being able to get away and turn off when you can. So feel free to drop those in chat. I've got both YouTube and Twitch up. So welcome back for everybody who we lost when we had to stop the stream. But it looks like we're green, looks like we're good. So on with the show.
We like green.
The show must go on.
The show must go on. All right, so we have a whole roundup of techniques. We got started on this because we were talking about food delivery and talking about how you can save time, and even make a new sort of habit slash tradition, I guess, by cooking at home, with either your partner or your family. And the idea of having this home recipe like kits. So like Blue Apron or Hungry Root. And in our house, we did those a couple of times. Mostly it was myself and my husband, and we did them sort of like a date night. But the idea of 2-in-1, where it saved time by picking a recipe and then going grocery shopping for the recipe and then coming home and then doing it, actually was like all freshly pre-prepared in most of these meal kits. And then it gets sent to you, and you sort of have a choice over what you're going to make, but it's very limited choice, which is sometimes the problem, is you have too many options for what you want to potentially make.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's interesting about this is these were obviously a thing before the pandemic, but both grocery delivery and these food, meal kits in a box have really kind of become very, very popular during COVID. And I think the food delivery ones that you're talking about, I have been doing Hungry Root, and it's funny that we're talking about this today because they're kind of on my shit list right now. And,
oh no! They've been messing up.
Yeah, they've been messing up. So what's funny is the box got to Sparks 2 days ago, and I've just watched it sit here for 2 days, and it's never been attempted to deliver, but now it's on its way back to Oakland. So what I'm going to do is I'm just canceling it. But I mean, to back up a second, I really liked Hungry Root because it was more like groceries, and you could follow the recipes or just use them as ingredients. And I mean, it was substantial things, unlike like a Blue Apron usually gives you a recipe and only enough of the ingredients to make that one recipe. And so perfect for a date night or something like that. But I found that it was not as good for like full meal prep. And then there's some of these boxes that send you like fully prepped meals that you just throw in the microwave or the oven and you don't even do anything.
Right.
And so this one was kind of like a good intermediary where you're still cooking, but what I loved is that, I don't have a dishwasher, so most of these meals were things that can be done in 1 or 2 pans. They're very filling. They're very good for you. It's mostly things I've been looking around town to see, like now that I'm thinking about replacing Hungry Root because I can't rely on them.
Yeah.
So not necessarily an endorsement of them, but almost all the things were things that they sell at the co-op. They're not things that you'd find in most grocery stores. It was a little bit higher end, a little bit more of that kind of stuff. So I'm curious to see, it was nice to not have to go to the grocery store and try to, especially it's calmed down now, but in the earlier days of the pandemic, that was a thing I didn't want to go do. So
absolutely. Yeah. And you can support the co-op, which is a local business.
Exactly. Yeah. I actually feel way better about doing that than, getting this box that may or may not come each week. So excited to do that. Right,
exactly.
And surprisingly, I don't think it's going to be cheaper though, necessarily. So, which is fine.
Well, okay. So now if you've added the co-op back into your list, what are you not going to do? Where are you going to find that time? Where are you going to make that time to get there?
Yeah. So for me, it wasn't so much the shopping. Like I'm not, that's not usually where the time suck is. It's if I don't, and I think I need to trick myself when I go to the co-op and kind of use the meal prep recipes from Hungry Root or make my own or something like that and stick to those. It was just that it took an element, I really like food, and so I don't want to be just given, a few options, but I also, when I'm working, I don't necessarily need all the options. I just want 6 to choose from. And so that was what was nice about that program, is that they randomized it every week. And so I think we can just kind of do the same thing and follow the same ingredient. We've doing it for a few months has taught me okay, this, and this, that's a meal. This, and this, that's a meal. Just go buy those 3 things, in different variations and things like that. So.
Right. Well, and that brings up another way to make time. And a lot of people do meal prepping as part of a diet or a weight loss or something like that sort of thing. But meal prepping, as far as like having it ready and done. So I've got kids, and so we still do their lunches like the morning of, and really it's mostly my husband makes the lunches, but we do the lunches on the morning of. But a lot of people do lunches like the morning before, or the evening before. But if you're prepping out, like, okay, I'm going to make a big thing of chicken and a big thing of sweet potatoes and a big thing of broccoli, and we're going to have that all week for lunches and such. I myself get sort of bored with meal prepping, and I've never been one to like so much like, okay, that's exactly a half a cup of rice and a thing of this. But it can definitely save a lot of time. I mean, the way I save time is I steal the leftovers out of the fridge and make a meal out of it.
Yeah.
That's my time saving. It's just like what's available. That's what I'm having. But it's another trick, and you were sort of doing that when you had the Hungry Root stuff. Well, it seemed like you had some things that were at the collective, and then other things like you can make 2 meals out of one, and then have the other half the next day or something like that, which helps a lot. Like even just making extra rather than just meal prepping.
Yeah, and I mean, most people think of meal prep as like spend a huge amount of time on Sunday making all one thing, and that you're going to get bored of real fast. So what I like about this is like, regardless of if you're going to the grocery store or finding one of these services, is creating that, if some people need to learn what things go well to make a full, complete meal that doesn't make you feel hungry in 20 minutes. But once you do understand that, and there's lots of YouTube out there, I know people are I love that people are falling in love with cooking because of the pandemic. But, being able to say like, okay, we're going to do a grain, a sauce, and a protein. And that's, we weren't doing meal prep, we were making everything on Sunday, but it was also like every meal took less than 20 minutes to make. And the decisions and all that stuff are out the window because it's just like grab one of each of those things, mix it up. Sometimes you're like, that wasn't the best mixture necessarily, but, figuring out what works. And this one, this is something that came up for me when I was doing my money podcast as well. As in hindsight, like some of these programs seem expensive, but because you're planning out the week by recipes, maybe not meal prepping all at once, but because you're planning out your food, you actually do end up with much less food waste, buying much less up front. When we were doing Hungry Root, the food waste, it was like by the time the next box came, the fridge was almost empty. And it was a good feeling because before it's like maybe you go to the grocery store, but you didn't really buy things with a plan, and then you also went out to eat, and then you also picked up something for lunch, and now you just don't have a plan. And so, part of it is just saving time and not having to decide what to make, and only stocking things that you're going to love. So it's not like, oh, I have to make that. It's like, no, I'm excited to make that. And it's going to be quick. It's not going to take up too much time. It's not going to create so many dishes that we have more things to do, right? So, that's that's the food thing.
Yeah. I hate throwing away. God. It's like, oh, look, an eggplant. Sure, we'll have this. My kids have never had it. We'll cook the whole thing.
Yeah. It is satisfying. There's some people, I think, like an Instant Pot or a crock pot, things like that are going to be good options for people, especially if they are working from home. You have, throw it all in the morning, and depending on what you're making, we do dinner at night. So
I do a lot of that.
Yes.
Well, so that sort of like leads into the idea of grouping tasks. So if you were meal prepping and you were cooking a bunch of things at one time on the Sunday, right? As far as doing them at home, so the idea of grouping tasks together at work is going to be make all your phone calls on the one day, or set aside like a couple of hours in one day to do those. Checking your emails at specific times, or setting a day aside for invoicing. But I'm trying to think of like grouping tasks together at home to save us time or to make time. I guess it'd be like cleaning, cooking, with work. If you shave the end off of the day by grouping certain tasks together, then that would definitely be making time. But I think the grouping similar items at home, I'm not entirely sure where I would make time doing that.
Yeah, I think that one's definitely harder. I think what you mentioned about scheduling certain things is probably the better way. Like
Mm-hmm.
when you think about it, it's like if you are always going to do laundry on a certain day or a certain chore on
Right.
certain days, if it's going to be like, you know, we're going to do a deep clean on certain days, it's probably more deep cleans than you ever do, right? Than if they're
Mm-hmm.
not planned. So
Yeah.
it's better to, or like you schedule a few things like Tuesdays are this, Wednesdays are this, you know, Sundays are
Mm-hmm.
this. And it might just be one small task, but then they all add up. And if you do them each day, then obviously that whole project of keeping the house clean is easier than letting it descend into chaos and then doing the huge deep clean and then doing that again and again and again.
Right.
So I think that's probably like what a Marie Kondo method would be.
Yeah, I was gonna say like that's a really good sort of way of looking at the next item, which was thinking about how to, when we have when you have all of your work tasks, there's certain things that fall in, like let's steal the oh my God, I want to call it the Roosevelt Matrix, but it's the Eisenhower Matrix.
Eisenhower, yeah.
Um on president. And what, like, you can group things in the important and urgent and not, or not important but urgent. And if you think about how you're able to cut down things as far as tasks, that maybe we're able to cut down things as far as belongings in the
Mm-hmm.
same way, right? So like Marie Kondo, her whole thing is built on what gives you joy,
Right.
right? So like I recently got rid of a bunch of books that I was waiting to read. Like I kept holding on to it because I was going to read it. And then, of course, 2 weeks later, I read an article that talked about how it's a good thing to have books that you haven't read yet because it shows that you want to read them. I'm not really sure. But anyway, I got rid of them because I was like, it's
That
been 10
sounds
years and I
that
haven't
sounds
read
like
this book.
justifications.
Right. It shows that you're a well-read person by having a shelf of books that you haven't read yet. What?
Yeah.
So yeah, like if we can, I try to look at it that way. So if I cut down on tasks to do during the day, instead of doing things that are, really a waste of time or aren't that important, or, they keep rolling over and over and over. Yeah, sometimes I can apply it to belongings that, like for instance, the books that I hadn't read for 10 years. Instead of keeping them and moving them from shelf to shelf every time I move my books, I just ditch it.
Yeah.
And
Well,
get rid.
and I mean, there's some studies and things around the number of storage units that are
Mm,
existing in America and how much stuff we have. And you know, if you want to get
yeah.
into it, there's the Minimalism documentary with those guys on Netflix and things.
Mm-hmm.
And it is true. Like if you're spending so much time cleaning, or like organizing, and it's the same thing over and over again. Like if you have fewer dishes, for instance, you can't make as much of a
Right.
mess in your kitchen. And that's one thing that I've been thinking about doing. Because it's like, how many coffee mugs do I really need to own, or can I have a few and just wash them more frequently, right? And I
Right.
mean, I
Right.
don't have a dishwasher, so that does happen. I'll end up with like, oh, they're
Yeah.
all used. Now it's time to wash them all.
Yeah.
Um, but you know, I also feel much better when the kitchen's clean and doesn't have that situation going on. So I think a lot of these things are so related. For me, again, the money podcast made me realize
Mm-hmm.
like the food thing, food, time, and money were all very related because
Yeah.
when I planned out what I was gonna do for that week, it usually affected my workouts, it affected my time, it affected how much money I
Mm-hmm.
was spending, and then all those all
Mm-hmm.
together affected my, my mood, my happiness. You don't feel like, right, like days like the last couple of days because my delivery box didn't show up. I was running out to go pick up food somewhere,
Yeah.
and that actually takes more time than knowing what you're going to have. You just go home, make it, do
Mm-hmm.
whatever that is. So
Mm-hmm.
it just feels like you're more put together, and it doesn't require that much
Yeah.
effort to do it to get there.
Yeah. And it gives you that. I think that's what part of making time is, making time for yourself as well. And I think you had said that before we went live. But the idea of making time for yourself sometimes requires the ability, all you need is just the ability to shut down. And
Yeah,
if you're sitting there like, oh, okay, I have 10 minutes to myself, but I'm still pissed off that that box didn't arrive. God damn it. It's like,
yeah,
well, now your mind is, it's not clear. You haven't actually made time to just be, you're frustrated about something else. And um, that's just as time consuming as as if, you had gone out shopping, I suppose. But yeah, it doesn't give you the time to actually relax and be quiet.
Well, so something for that, I would say I've been using the reminders app on my iPhone a lot more, where you just like
Mm.
remind me of this. I think what you're talking
Mm-hmm.
about is some of these things end up staying rent free in our heads, so
Yeah.
that we can't relax, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so if you're working on multiple projects or even something small, like I need to remember to set up an appointment or go get the car washed, like it's really
Mm-hmm.
hard to turn off when you are worried you're going to forget one of those things, and you like gotta keep
Yes.
them all in memory or they're going to disappear. And that's not, it doesn't feel good. It's how we get anxious. And,
Mm-hmm.
so using a tool to dump those things, whether it's bullet journal or reminders or whatever
Mm-hmm.
thing you think you will actually go back to. It doesn't help if you dump it in there and then never go back to it. But reminders is good because on your phone it will come back, and then if I can't do it right now, I'll say dismiss it, and it comes back again tomorrow, and it just keeps
Mm-hmm.
nagging you. And that way, your brain doesn't have to be the one that's like, hey, you gotta do this. Hey, we gotta do this. It's like let
Yes.
technology do that. It's really good at that. If you're
Yes.
finding that you're accumulating lots of those things every weekend, well, then maybe it's time to schedule some time to just knock through a bunch of them. But
Right. Yeah, it's one of when we set up the co-work with us. So we have 2 hours a week that we set up where we do a virtual co-working, and Colin's been hosting. And for me on Fridays, what I end up doing, and that's what we've sort of talked about, is to take all of those. For me, it's bits of scratch paper usually,
mm-hmm.
and I write something down, then I keep it, and then I might transfer it to a piece of notebook paper or something like that. But putting all of those things on the Friday, the end of the day, writing all the things down, removing the things that took all week that should have gotten done, and most likely they're no longer important anyway. No longer needed, right?
Like,
If
oh, we
they've
missed
gone that
that.
whole
It's
week.
already
Yeah,
gone.
like, oh. So then getting rid of those, and then having this nice, neat list on the Friday, or whenever the end of your week is. Maybe the end of your week isn't a Friday, but ending it so that there's a couple of days where I don't have to have going through my mind, oh, did I remember to write? Oh, did I do that one thing? Oh, I've got to remember to do this thing on Monday. Is like getting it out, getting it down on paper, and then closing the book and coming back to it at the beginning of my week, which happens to be Monday for me. But it kind of clears out. I think it sort of clears out the week and gives me a space to be more in the present when I go home for the weekend than if in the back of my mind it's still rattling around like, oh, what about those couple of things I need to do for work on Monday? Like, I know it's written down. I'll get to it when I get there. Like,
yeah. And I mean, what you're talking about, like in our Monday co-work session, we do more of like a getting into the week. Even though it's the end of Monday, it's like,
right.
what do you need to do
And
to
on Monday,
spin
yep.
up? And then on Friday, it's what do you need to spin down? Because some of those things might just be, like you said, that nagging task that could have been done Monday, but you just never got to it. And just don't go into the weekend with it so that you can actually feel good about turning off, because you got to do it all again on Monday. So we got to reset.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and now I'm forgetting who the person was. Get work done program. So that was one of the things that came up when we were looking up this topic and when we were talking about it. So the idea of, the end of the week roundups, we talked about that, kicking off your week with Mondays, but the get work done, and I want to say it's by a guy named Paul something, and now I'm blanking on it, but he has that sort of system where he builds in the front of the week and the end of the week. And you can even find for instance, we use Todoist at the collective. Colin and I use Todoist to keep together on figuring out what things we need to do. The Get Work Done program has its own. There's like a whole Todoist template based on the Get Work Done program, and some of it is a reflection on what you have done and how well it was accomplished, and then how much you were able to do at the end of the week and going back and looking at it. And I think some of those things, it takes a while to get into it at the beginning, but once you've done it for a couple of weeks, you start to see where you are like making time, whether it's time that your mind is clear and you don't have to worry about those things. I feel like I'm gonna have children run in here any minute. I can hear the floor shaking, but no one else can. So that at the end of the week, after doing it consistently, you start to see the payoff and the time that you're able to make.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's very similar to like the energy audit, which we have an episode on, and then work cycles. There's a lot of people have been finding that, you know, a task system by itself doesn't seem to work very well without like an intentional review. Like, and again, I mean, we're going to disclaim every episode around this. It is not to make us into superhumans that get only the most important things done and all the time. Because what happens as freelancers and small business owners and anyone who owns their own company is you will rationalize, and I know everyone out there everyone's done it. You will rationalize, I own this business, therefore I will put in as much time and I will never turn off as possible.
Yeah.
And I'll make it up later. And later never comes, right? It's like I'll sleep when I'm dead and all these, you know, hustle culture, hustle porn, all this stuff that most people burn out, you know, whether it's through getting sick and realizing, okay, I have to bench myself, or until they see, you know, someone else doing that. And so we try to help people realize, like, you know, it is going to be a marathon. Like, you can sprint on occasion, but then you got to pull it back a little bit and then sprint again. It's not about just going, you know, 100% all the time, or you're going to burn out.
Right. Well, and I think that brings us to the very last point, which is the learning to say no. Is learning how to set your own priorities and not live by other people's priorities that they have set for you. And it's a hard one because, like, I'm a more empathetic person, and so I tend to want to help, right? So if someone, whether they've asked me directly or not, I want to help. And sometimes I have to tell myself, no, you can't help. They haven't even asked me
it might be something
for help.
You're good at too, right? If it's something you're good at, you want to help with that.
Right. And it also, like, it feels really good, but sometimes those are things we have to say no to, or, you know, recognizing that a client, I ran into one of our members in the wine aisle and at Rayleigh's, of course, buying 6 packs of wine because you get it for 30% off. And we were talking about, like, what you can do to A, delegate, and B, say no. Like, it has to come in tandem, right? You can't just say yes and then start delegating. There has to be a point at which you say no, especially if you don't have another person to delegate it to.
Right. Or, I mean, if you're saying yes to somebody else, you're saying no to something that you were trying to do, or no to one of your things. And so it doesn't always feel good. I think, you know, especially, like I said, if it's something that you're good at or you think you really can help with that, there's ways to pull it back a little bit. You know, most freelancers will start to think of their time as hourly billable time, and they'll even start to think about their free time as billable time. But like Don, one of the collective member owners, he likes to think of it inverted. It's like, my weekends are not my free time that are now literally free to do extra work. They're actually more expensive, right? It's not, if I'm $100 an hour, my weekends should be $200 an hour. And even then, it's probably a no, because, you know, I could make more money, but that's not the goal here, right? It's that you need to have time to either do some of those projects that are creatively fulfilling, or getting outside, or doing nothing, taking a break, so that when the work week comes around, you can say yes to the things that you need to be doing or want to be doing.
Right, like the old adage of live to work or work to live. Right. So which one, you know, it's almost like each opportunity you have to say yes or say no. And like you said, you know, sometimes saying no is actually saying yes to yourself.
Yeah.
But if you look at all those opportunities to help, or even if someone wants to pay you, because the person in question has the clients to pay, like, that's not a problem. She'll be paid, but she doesn't actually there are only 24 hours in the day. There is actually a limit. And it's not for lack of trying no sleep, you know, for lack of trying to, like, sleep less. It just is a matter of, like, health, and you do have to sleep. Like, you do have to turn off at some point.
Right.
But that idea of, okay, is this going to take me, am I working to live or am I living to work? And I think that's hard to remember feel like that should be a part of the energy audit questioning, is like at the end,
Yeah.
where
So
on that work-life balance did you actually fall?
yeah, so this is a good segue into what are we making time for. So
Mm,
you know, again, we're talking about this isn't necessarily that it's a pandemic and you should be picking up new hobbies, right? I'm sure
mm-hmm.
you had
Right.
things you wanted to do. I've been listening to David Chang's podcast, which is very, very good if you're into it. It's not all about food, which I was surprised by. He talks about food quite a bit, but David Chang of Momofuku restaurants and those
Yes.
kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
very, very interesting podcast. But they actually kind of were asking like, what is your quarantine bucket list? Which is like, and I think we can try to answer that ourselves here. But it's like, what is something that you'd feel bummed that you didn't do during quarantine? And again, that's not to be like, you know, you should be out there trying to do sourdough bread and all these things that everyone's picking up. But it's like
I'm
this
bummed I don't look like Sarah Jessica Parker at the end of COVID. I should be totally buff by doing nothing.
I mean, some of their answers were things like reading more and that kind of thing. I think just like, a lot of us found that our lives were a little bit different, either working from home and, parents both, teaching, co-teaching with teachers and things like that. And I think for David Chang, it was, he's actually been focused on fitness, which is not something that he ever focused on. He wouldn't say that he'd ever focused on it, I guess.
Right.
Right. And so, those kinds of things that, what do you want to make time for? And when in Codivation, which a quick plug, we're doing another Codivation starting in March, which is next week.
Which is next week.
We do
make a note.
We do an exercise where we basically kind of think forward 5 years, and even 1 year, 3 year, 5 years to different things that you want to accomplish, and then break them backwards so that you can think about, okay, well, if I'm going to want to write a book or start a business or any of these things, climb a certain mountain, working backwards, what are some of the habits that I need to form to eventually get there, right? You're not going to flip a switch and get there tomorrow, but if you're going to hike Kilimanjaro, you just can't start at Kilimanjaro, right? So maybe let's say, how do we get to the top of Mount Rose before the end of the year, things like that. So like Codivation is a way of breaking that down. We work with the members to go through those and create habits instead of these big sweeping like New Year's resolution type things. And I think figuring out a habit, I think that would be my answer to the bucket list quarantine question, is like, what habit is that? And for me, it's definitely like, I enjoy cooking, I need to save money, and I care about my health. So for me, that habit is, 2 of 3 meals a day have to be done at home. And I usually only eat 2 meals, so that usually works out. But
right.
Yeah. But then, like, taking time to go out and support local businesses, because unfortunately I love food that much where it's like, if I could, I would go out to eat every meal if I could. And so figuring out like, okay, the ramen takeout is on Saturdays and and all of that. So
nice.
John Butler wants to know, how do we go back in time? So
I think, well, that'll be my bucket list.
Yeah, back in time. I think when we bring our movie nights back, we're gonna have to do some Back to the Future.
Yeah.
We can learn from Doc Brown that way.
Yeah. That sounds like a plan.
Yes. I'll see you there, John.
Exactly. In the future. Oh, man. Yeah, I think I got the impression, or I thought at the beginning of COVID with being at home, that there would be a lot more creativity happening in my house, like with me and my kids. And a lot of it was just like, there was a chunk of time that was just coping with being together for so many hours.
Yeah.
And I love my kids, and I know my kids love me, but I also love not being with them, and they love not being with me.
Yeah.
Like, it's a good, healthy combination. So yeah, but then I look around the house and I'll see, oh yeah, that one day when all 3 of us were just like really frustrated, and I was like, oh, screw it. We'll just, here's some paper and some watercolors. And it actually turned out like really fun.
Yeah.
It wasn't this planned, let's look up this video on YouTube and learn how to make dinosaurs. It was like, oh, just scribble something down and paint it. And those are really good memories, like from this last year, which I cannot believe it's almost been a year. But it's like it bums me out that we didn't do a special art project every single week. But at the same time, there were some good times.
Yeah. Well, and I think some of those challenges are, they're not distractions, but ways of coping for sure. And there's a lot of like Instagram and TikTok challenges around like do this once a week, do this every day, and stuff like that.
Yep.
If that's what you need, that's great. I think I'm going to bring it back to cooking just because I guess I can, but that's one where, because I think so many of us were so busy before. I mean, we were still busy, but like we were busy moving around everywhere.
Yeah.
Cooking kind of fell to the back burner. And obviously the Chipotles and the McDonald's of the world are doing great during all this, because some people are just defaulting to that. But more and more people are realizing, what cooking means. And I don't know if your kids like cooking with you guys, or if you guys have explored that. But it's a thing that it's an activity for spending time together, in addition to, you got to eat, so you might as well learn something together. Or, and I imagine that's where the baking of bread and some of these other things have come from for some people.
And at the beginning, it was a big, it was a way of spending time. So it was a way that we made time as a family, was on, I think it was Fridays, we were doing picking up pizza dough and pizza kits from Liberty.
Yeah.
And we were doing that. And it was like a couple of, I feel like it was all summer. And then we just got a little burned out.
Yeah.
and it slowly became, mommy and daddy are the only ones making this. And then, oh, look, it's only daddy because mommy's over there having wine. Well,
wine goes lovely with pizza. So.
It really does.
It does.
And it just, it went from being a thing that we were doing together that we all, just like I said, it got burned out on. And so we switched to other things. And, there was the board games, and then those kind of fizzled out because there's very few they were willing to do. And then the puzzles and things like that. But those are the kinds of things that I would like to make time for. By not
like
doing
what you're talking about is something that we see at the collective too. It's like once it becomes a thing that is on the calendar and it's like this has to happen at this time, it becomes structured and mandatory. And we talk about this as cruise directing, and we have to avoid that, because then it's like you take the fun out of it. It's like, I'm pretty sure if we tried to cook every single meal in, we would run into that same rut, right? We break it up with heading out to go pick something up quick if we need to, or having like a fancy, takeout for, date night or something like that. But, or even trying to see if we can recreate something that we really like, right? Just maybe mixing it up. But pizza, you can't go wrong with. Just don't burn out.
Yeah, exactly. We'll get back to it.
Awesome.
Cool. Well, good.
I think that will definitely wrap for this week. So I want to just repeat, we are doing Codivation again. So if you're a member and if you want to do it again, if you've never done it before, we're taking both veterans and noobs, so whichever works for you. It's very, very easy. It does require an hour meeting a week, but you will gain a lot more time and energy out of just participating in it. And so it goes for 8 weeks. So if you're interested in that, definitely reach out to Rachel. Slack and Circle are best for that. And then if you aren't a member, we have online memberships available now at arenacollective.com, so you can check those out, which include Codivation and a bunch of other things that we're doing, like the virtual co-working. And where can people find this show and I guess the rest of all of our things online?
You find it in all the places. But we do have, all of our episodes, so that you aren't stuck to a structure. You can watch all of our episodes at any point, at your own time. Some are on Twitch, or they're on Twitch for about a week or so, right? And then they live on YouTube, so you can always look those up. A great way to get information from us, we just relaunched our newsletter, and this time it's going to be weekly. And it's short and sweet. It's kind of like our 5 bullet points for the week, and it comes out on Tuesdays.
Yeah, work from home
We just did
survival
the
guide.
first one. Yes, exactly, the Work from Home Survival Guide. You can sign up at our website, and that's just renocollective.com. But yeah, you can subscribe and unsubscribe at any point, but short and sweet, and it just has the highlights from what the coming week and maybe some news stories from the past and something fun in each one, something interesting, something work related, personal related. It's just a change of pace versus, your traditional newsletter of dun, 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 this is what we're doing all month long. So
Perfect.
that's where you can find us,
All right.
renocollective.com.
All right. Well, that's going to do it. So we'll see you guys next week, Wednesday at 5 o'clock. Have a good week, everybody.
Exactly. Bye.